Copyright. Ooh.
Serena.
Oh. Ooh, it's that bass for me.
Rolling! Not JK!
Silento on the step.
Anyway, hi y'all. Welcome. Welcome back, friends, subscribers, all the humans out there listening. Look what's here. Microphone. And it matches the headphones. Ooh. Anyway, welcome to the first episode of MerMAYd 2K23.
And what is MerMAYd here on Evilly Yours English? Claudia.
Oh, well then, Christina. It's where we celebrate all things mermaid in preparation for Disney's live action The Little Mermaid that's coming out at the end of this month, baby. And we will be seeing it where, Christina?
Disney Springs in Orlando.
If you can't tell, we're mad hype. So hype. Like, beyond. I mean, to the point that we made this whole month dedicated to mermaids. Well, sea creatures as a whole. And so, you know you want to be part of our world as we make a splash in this month of May.
Wow. So come submerged in the dark depths of bioluminescence as we illuminate you with knowledge of sea lore. Was that good or was that good?
I liked it. Did you like my swimming?
I loved it. I didn't know you could swim that well. I definitely can't.
Yeah, I mean, I could doggy paddle too. Don't forget about I hope this doesn't do anything to the audio because crazy.
It's just a New York thing. We can only swim on Zoom.
Speak for yourself. I could swim in the depths of the ocean.
So you with that scary freaking flounder, you and flounder out there in the waves, getting pulled into the undertow?
Girl, no, because I'm smart. I know how to swim across the current so that I don't die. But parallel to the shore or something like that. Whatever. I know what to do. The only thing I can't do is like dive into water. That's the only thing that sucks for me.
That's why you didn't encounter SpongeBob or the Little Mermaid as a child.
Listen, the reason why I didn't encounter the Little Mermaid is because of her untimely demise. That's really why. But we'll get there.
Spoiler alert.
Listen, they know. Well, you'll find out. You'll see. You'll see.
Yeah, honestly, if you're joining for a book club, you've already been warned that there will be spoilers, and we just strongly encourage you to read along with us. In fact, if you want to read along, DM us and we can share resources with you.
Yeah, honestly, it's just going to be more fun that way because then you can interact with all of our fun social media stuff. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever. But before we start talking about The Little Mermaid, at least the short story by Senor Hans Christian Andersen, we need to talk about the different genres that make up folklore as a whole. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And what better than to start at the very beginning, but talking about legends, folklore, and then leading into Hans. So
Girl,
let's go, Claudia.
Good place to start. When you really begin with, there's another copyright. Yay. Anyway.
Do, yay, me.
Do, yeet, me. Don't yeet me.
Eat me.
Anyway, so we have the umbrella term folklore, and it refers to mediums such as stories and music that refers to an identity of a culture of a group of people from like a particular region that are typically passed down orally. And there are 4 main ones. Yes, there are other ones. We are focusing on narratives though. So narrative is just a way of saying stories. So calm down. Nobody jump down my throat. Okay. The first one is fables. Fables, I promise you know what it is. They're super duper short. They will often involve at least one person or an animal, and they are typically like learning a universal truth. For example, I would argue one of the most famous ones, The Tortoise and the Hare. And in it, we have a tortoise and a hare that are going against each other in a race. The hare is as a hare does, going super duper fast, and the tortoise is like la-di-da. And it ends up, spoiler alert, that the tortoise wins, and so the universal truth you are meant to take from it is that slow and steady wins the race. Then we get some mythology, and you already know that our mythology guru is here in the studio. But to put it plainly, specific to certain cultures, and oftentimes it'll explain how like everyday phenomenon came to be. So like, for example, in Greek mythology, where we have the seasons, we talked about her, Persephone, and because of her ascendance from the underworld and then her descendants to the underworld, that's why we have the seasons. Ooh, whippa. I tugged my cords crazy. Then we have legend. Typically, it is surrounding a human who is believed to have existed in human history. They are usually the focal point of these stories. Oftentimes, there's some sort of miracle that occurs within legends. And the most popular one is King Arthur. Yeah, so he's a cool dude. But the one that we will be focusing on, at least for today's intents and purposes, is fairy tale. Ah, my favorite, because it's so much fun to argue with people about fairy tales. Uh, so typically this involves some sort of magical elements and usually some royalty, but the royalty part's a little wonky, a little shaky. And usually there are some magic numbers involved. The numbers 3 and 7 will often come up. Again, I say often, there are some exceptions, just like in English, which is why English is evil. And typically, they are used to introduce some sort of social rules or expectations to children. So, for example, the one that I absolutely despise, Snow White, was meant to show kids because this dumbass falls for it 3 times, that old hag. I cannot emphasize how much I hate this one. Granted, she's like 7 in the original tale, I think. So fine, whatever. But it was meant to scare kids into not opening the door to strangers, essentially. Yeah.
Wait.
Uh-huh.
So, how effective is a fairy tale if the kid doesn't pick up on the freaking moral?
Think about it. Fall for it once, shame on you, stupid.
Right.
Because, like, the old hag comes and she's always, like, selling something. The first thing was, what was it? The first thing I think was, like, a comb. And so she ran it through her head and she was like, ooh, dead. Then the dwarfs come home from a day at work, and they're like, "Oh, damn, Snow White is over here on the floor. Damn, we should probably take this comb out." And she's like, "Wow, that was crazy." Anyway, then the hag comes back, gives her laces for her corset, and tightens it to the point that she can't breathe, and then passes out again. Then the dwarves come home. They're like, "Oh my God, this dumbass fell for it again. Wow, her laces look really, really flippin' tight. Let's really, loosen it up." And she's like, "Oh my God, crazy." And then the third time is the apple. And so the apple was harder to like figure out because she takes a bite out of it, gets stuck in her throat. And so they're like, "Okay, let's try all the things that we can to wake this dumbass up." They can't, so they put her in a glass coffin. Then the prince comes and he's like, "Yo, holy shit, that's bae, she dumb pretty."
She's so healthy. The last thing she ate was an apple. Like to be an apple a day.
An apple a day apparently doesn't keep the hag away. So then she's in the glass coffin. He's like, "Holy shit, she dumb pretty. Dwarves, help me take her to my kingdom," or whatever. And they're like, I guess. So then they lift up the coffin. I wish I was kidding. They lift up the coffin. Somebody trips over a tree root, and then it dislodges the apple from her throat. And then she's like, "Whoa, who is this handsome fella?" Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, disturbed, are you not?
That's the original Snow White?
Mm-hmm. From the Grimm brothers. Mm-hmm.
But that's
Yeah.
not gore. She survives. All she does is
No,
basically she needed a speech pathologist to help her
correct.
Heimlich out the apple.
So here's where things get a little dare I say grim with that particular story. They find the hag slash I think she was the queen, possibly I kind of get things crossed. It could possibly be the prince's mom, but I might be thinking of the Sleeping Beauty one. But anyway, they find her and they torture her by putting her into these red hot shoes that are made out of like I think iron, some kind of metal. They force her to step into them and dance until she dies, basically. Hmm.
Why do fairy tales love abusing young women?
Oh, girl, we could do a whole episode on that. I did a whole lesson on that, girl.
I mean, it's definitely part of today's topic for sure.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
At
Oh,
least,
also, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was a beautiful Sagu, but I did have a fun fact here. The Grimm brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm, um, German, they were among the first to transfer folklore from being passed orally to being passed down on paper. So,
so guess who we have to thank for that? Our boy Johannes von Printing Press. Once again.
yay! Is he just going to keep coming up in every episode? I hope
He's like
so.
our invisible third. He's our producer.
Obviously.
He's like actually the producer of the show.
Von PP, I love you.
But that's a great point that you make. So originally there's oral tradition, right? Which is people sharing stories in conversation or like around a fire as we kind of see depicted in movies. Or just stories handed down through your family or your community, right?
Or even on podcasts. Crazy.
If you're part of the family, get ready. In addition to like legends that get passed down for like generations, there's also those first-hand accounts of encounters or things people claim they saw, right? Like Sasquatch or the Loch Ness Monster, right? So people routinely will claim they had the encounters or they cited these things in public after like the first report of them, and it kind of just becomes a meme before we had, Instagram or Reddit or whatever you're using when
Not
the
a
original
meme.
memes dropped. Bro, Sasquatch is a meme. So similarly, in some cultures all around the world, as we'll uncover a little bit today, there were already stories or depictions of half fish, half humans, typically female on top, fish on the bottom. And then we had seafaring cultures claiming that they encountered these creatures in the sea. And then, one pirate says it, another sailor says it, another fisherman says it, and then before you know it, a mermaid comes to be or something. At least in Western seafaring cultures, who are always on the water on their ships.
And I mean, if you think about it too, a lot of these people, these pirates, or even like those that are maybe like royalty sailing ship and stuff, they'll typically put a mermaid on the front of their ship.
Despite in pirate lore, women are bad luck, but
Always.
I mean, girl.
Anyway,
The last thing we want to do. On the whole, because women are kind of associated with bad luck on the seas with these Western, at least, cultures, we're going to talk a little bit about Western mermaids first, because that's where Ariel comes from, our Disney princess Ariel.
Oh, cool.
The Western definition from Webster's is literally what I said. It's an imaginary creature described in these stories, body of a woman on top, torso and face, and then the tail of a fish. And they were often associated with these terrible natural disasters, floods, shipwrecks, drownings. And then other cultures, not necessarily in the West, some in the West, portrayed them more as benevolent or water spirits who imbued powers into humans who encountered them. The original scope of a mermaid, really, we're kind of historians, or at least in my research, kind of came from the sirens of Greek mythology. But sirens were actually these bird female figures, and then in the Middle Ages they got misrepresented into fish female figures, and that's kind of where some historians think the concept of our modern mermaid comes from.
Is that why women are called birds?
In the streets.
Out in the seas, you mean?
Bird in the streets
Birds in the streets.
and a mermaid in the sheets.
And bird. Oh.
Amazing.
So, anywho, The sirens of Greek mythology, which we're going to dig into a lot next week. For our purposes for today, we're going to call them more like seductresses, or they would lure male sailors in to tempt them and eat them, kill them, whatever it is. But we'll get to that. So this concept of like that manipulative siren then becomes adopted with this more medieval into current vision of a mermaid. So I kind of started wondering about mermen. So I thought this was really interesting, and Claudia, I think you would really appreciate this.
I started laughing because every time I hear mermen, I always think about Zoolander when he's just like, merman. Merman.
I keep thinking of Ethel Merman, and I don't even know who she is.
Who is that even? Loki?
Who is she?
Merman.
Loki, it feels like you're
Come
violating
on.
some sort of HIPAA. I'm just saying.
No, it's not my patient.
I know it's not because you're smarter than that.
She's an actress.
Yeah.
You
If
know
you
what?
Google her, you'll see.
Ethel Merman.
It's like a drag actress, right? Like so, like.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
She's like mega, like old-timey comedian. But also, like, pin-up bae. And she was born Ethel Agnes Zimmerman in 1908.
She would be.
That's why her name's Ethel. Who names her? If your name is Ethel and you're listening, props.
Also, can you tell us? Because I'm genuinely curious if you exist in the world, honestly.
Can you tell us?
Can you be like, hi, my name is Ethel. Be my friend. Because I want to know that you exist in the world.
If you're...
Hi, I'm ethanol.
No, not ethanol.
Oh, not ethanol. Go out. Get out.
Straight to jail.
Right to jail.
So while you are looking up Ethel Merman, I will continue the
Why was she
merman.
looking up Ethel Merman?
Because
Because I don't know what
Alright, let's just do a podcast. It's called Chaos Chat. and
it
we
is
just-
chaos chat.
We start with a topic and we end somewhere else. Chaos Chat.
So Claudia, I thought you would be interested in this, especially given what I was able to find. So
Right.
I did some research because it was very challenging to find the like origin or sightings of mermen, and I also reached out to an expert. reveal who that's going to be. That'll be our guest speaker next week.
Ooh.
But mermen are typically only seen like in coats of arms in heraldry to represent like leadership, power, or to represent like the leader of the culture. So like as my consult said, if the Danish king was wearing lots of jewels and roses, then the merman representation of him on his arms would also have all that decor. Kind of like sigils in Game of Thrones.
hot.
Made me think of the Manderleys, who actually have a merman as their sigil. It makes sense that a Danish king might have a merman because those are status post Vikings, right? So like you have dominion over the sea, maybe.
I'd also imagine that was their main way of like trade at that point. as
Oh,
well.
absolutely. Yeah, especially because we know, most early civilizations settle along waterfronts, right? To
Big facts.
cultivate, get water, and then eventually, trade
Because-
developed, exactly like you said.
Logic.
That is why a lot of these early cultures along water systems have sightings of mermaids. However, no one really reported seeing a merman. So what it seems that some scholars think is that folks who, when pirates and fishermen came back and they were like, we saw a mermaid, she wrecked our ship, she, altered the storms. It was just like generally accepted that there was a binary in biological sex. So like, oh, if there's a mermaid, then she's probably mating with a merman under the water. And that was how that came to be.
I like it.
So that was the logic. Yeah, I thought you would appreciate that.
I like it.
But
Get it.
anywho,
That's the most logical thing I've ever heard humans say.
yeah, if they procreate, it has to be. But then, they're also giving like a very human procreation, right? What if she just like meiosis?
They could also maybe procreate like fish.
Exactly. So then she wouldn't necessarily, like, it doesn't need to be like a mask male. But these are all things like we impart onto the creatures we design in our imagination.
Yeah, but also I feel like it's because that's like your norm So, like, until you're proven otherwise, you're going to apply your norm. It's not right. It's just how I think the brain works until, something else comes up.
Very few accounts of mermen sightings exist, and it is because, for the most part, if something went awry, you're going to blame a woman, right? So a mermaid is to blame, or historically they are tempting these sailors.
Isn't it ironic, or maybe not ironic, but funny how women have so little power in society, but out in these seas, we are vengeful bitches. Crazy.
It's like rain. Apparently, even good old Christopher Columbus, the maniac himself, reported that he had encountered mermaids on his exploration into the North Americas and the Caribbean. But what a lot of scientists and historians think today is these people were really just encountering large sea mammals for the first time, manatees, dolphins, and misconstruing the vision that they had. Or, as my consult said, when your brain's on scurvy, or you're like at sea for weeks and you're dehydrating and you're starting to have hallucinations, anything could look like anything, and who better to blame than this woman's tempting me and she won't come to me, right?
Yeah. Nothing hits like scurvy, man.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I don't think any mermaid, real or false, would be attracted to those chapped lips, but...
That's your most concerning thing? The chapped lips?
The vitamin C deficiency!
That's the most concerning thing about these men on a ship for weeks on end, months maybe.
I'm crying.
Chapped lips.
They can't kiss the bae. Eric gets to kiss the bae. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, right?
With her consent. Although I have heard that they changed the lyrics to that song in the new one.
Oh, same. I can't wait to talk about that. This was more of like a Western, like European, like white folk kind of perception of mermaids. So this is going to lead us into our Little Mermaid book that if you were reading along with us, you took a look at that 26-page interesting inspiration for the Disney movie. From what year was that from?
Well, the movie is 1989, and then the story is 1837.
So there you go. So this was the major inspiration for Ariel's story, Princess Ariel's story.
See a lot of the movie in the story.
Absolutely. Oh, actually, let me open my annotations. With my prayers.
With my girl, she needs more than prayers.
She needs so many things.
So many thoughts and prayers going out to this poor lass.
Claudia, why don't you tell us a little bit about the original story of the Little Mermaid, who was nameless originally, and then after that we'll compare kind of this West European mermaid to other half fish, half people of other cultural lore.
Yo, I love it. So, this little mermaid, she saves this drowning human who she finds out is a prince, and she later finds out that if this human loves her back, that she might end up getting some sort of immortal soul. And the mermaid decides that she is going to venture on land after making a really dicey deal with a sea witch. And so during this deal, she hears the terms and conditions that she needs to marry this prince and have him return this love to her, or she risks death. And so when this prince marries another, this mermaid sacrifices herself instead of harming the prince. And as a reward for her good deed, this mermaid is given another opportunity for gaining an immortal soul through joining the magical Danish airbenders. Ooh.
No, seriously though. Why is she suddenly the Avatar?
When I said, hold on. When I said to you that this foam ends up in the air, you're like, no, the foam stayed in the water. No. She, the foam, ended up in the air.
She, the foam. So this girl is first a waterbender as a mermaid. Then she gets these painful ass legs that feel like she's going to die with every step just to gaze upon this boy, the prince. So she's then an earthbender. And then she dies and becomes sea foam and then air, so the wind, sorry. So then she's an airbender. What?
But she's not fully the Avatar. She hasn't mastered fire yet.
Fire.
So, crazy.
True. She doesn't even have
None.
a name.
No, nameless. That's my favorite part. Nameless.
This anonymous little girl. This
Anonymous
little
was so
tender,
annoying.
this tender little e-girl.
Ugh, she's so dumb. And the fact that throughout the story, when she's when she's a hero, when she's a human, this man keeps calling her dumb
Girl.
because you mute, because you mute, girl. Be
Oh,
better.
well, hold on,
Do better.
rewind.
I'm
So,
sorry.
the sea witch, who also is nameless and isn't necessarily an octopus lady, the sea witch does strike a deal and does want her voice, but instead of capturing it in a shell, she severs the Little Mermaid's tongue, so she can't even grow it back. It's donezo.
Mm-hmm.
And so the
Done.
prince just keeps calling attention to it, and then at one point he's like, "Oh, how I might love you if I didn't, yearn for this
Gaslighter.
person I think saved me on the shore." Low key, it was Ariel.
Lighter.
Yeah, and
Gaslighter.
she's just following him along. Every step she takes feels like her bones are breaking and she's bleeding at the hip, right?
God.
Until finally he marries his princess. So that's how this this story ends.
And she turns into foam and an airbender. I so mad. It's just okay.
26 pages of WTF. So Claudia, Ariel was one of my favorite princesses growing up. Maybe it's because she was there when I was super young in the 90s, but I loved her. Like my mom always makes fun of how much I loved Ariel. And in retrospect, this story is so sad. She's just following a guy around. And in this story, it's even worse because she dies because of it. But I don't remember actually reading this story. And I was wondering what on earth could have inspired Hans Christian Andersen, this glorified in Copenhagen, Denmark. There's literally a whole museum dedicated to this man.
And a cute little statue in the middle of the bay.
It is cute.
She's just chilling.
In one of the canals, she's
Resting.
all sadly resting on the stone. But what could have inspired him to write this story?
So,
I knew you'd know.
so Hans, he is a bisexual man living in the 1800s. And one source, before I get to that, one source said that he was influenced by general folklore revolving around merfolk and water nymphs. But the one that I love, and I think it's true, is that he's a cute little bisexual king, and he fell in love with a man. He never married himself, but he did fall in love numerous times, both with men and women. But there was this one man, Edward Cullen. Colin! I can't read.
Do you know how I almost just passed out when you said that?
Oh, you know why? So, whenever we record, we have our notes out. At least for me, I have a split screen going on. And, yes, we are knowledgeable, but, every scholar needs notes, okay? So, right when you clicked here, it blocked the last name, so autofill happened, and I was like, Edward Cullen.
Twilight. Hans Christian Andersen and Edward Cullen.
I think we have the title. The title.
I think we have the title. So that explains where the Cullens came from. I guess they're from Scandinavia. Okay, cool.
Must be. I mean, they are vampires and they are very, very pale.
It would be really beneficial to sparkle at the summer solstice when you have sunlight all day.
Well, they sparkle, they do, but it's because they have that Victoria's Secret puff body powder. You know the one.
Nah, it's Fenty Puff.
No, originally it was Victoria's Secret. Then Rihanna perfected it. There's a difference. Maybe it's Cullen. I can't lie though. Twilight is just a guilty pleasure. It's so funny. Anyway, best comedy you'll watch. Moving on. Hans actually wrote love letters to Colin. And I know, and it contains such sentiments as, I long for you. Yes, this moment. I long for you as if you were a lovely girl. My sentiments for you are those of a woman. The femininity of my nature and our friendship must remain a mystery. I know, little E King. Ugh, I love him. E boy.
With that sentiment alone, you can kind of, I guess I can kind of see how he wrote about that feeling of unrequited, impossible love, right? From the mermaid's perspective.
Right, but like, did he have to die? Or did she have to die, rather? Cullen didn't reciprocate. Obviously, this caused great distress. And so that's why many of his tales, specifically The Little Mermaid, but other tales as well, because he also wrote, I think, The Little Matchbook, The Little Match Girl. That's very sad. Big time trigger warning with that one. But it's a very like melancholy type of theme and motif that comes by. There is this theme of unrequited love, heartbreak, and yeah, I mean, every writer, for the most part, writes about what they know, and usually that's what happens in their personal life. It's the sad truth. I mean, look at Edgar Allan Poe.
100%.
Mask of the Red Death. Tuberculosis. That took not one, but two great women in his life. So, back to Hans. And yes, I know that we should be referring to him by his last name, but like, we're like this right now. Hans is his name. And so that is that. But yeah, so then his personal life has also fueled like this whole academic analysis, or further analysis, I should say, of the possible homoerotic themes that are within his work.
I did not know that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. Christina, when we were doing the research and stuff, she was just like, "Did you know?" And I said, "I didn't know his specific name, but yeah, I knew he was gay."
We think of the 1800s and we don't think of too many out authors, you know what I mean? Or like overtly, like we...
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, does this bring us to the Oscar Wilde moment?
I mean, you talk to me about Oscar.
So, on a similar note, so Oscar Wilde was openly gay in his era of writing, which was around the same time as Hans. And Oscar was a huge fan of Hans Christian Andersen. And after he read The Little Mermaid, apparently he, like, had a retort. Like, he had a rap battle moment. So he wrote a really short response storyline where the roles were flipped. So in his fairy tale, a fisherman, and so in Hans's story, the prince has a soul that he can share with the mermaid if he loves her, and the mermaid wants him and the soul. So in this story, the fisherman is human, so he has a soul, and he falls in love with a mermaid, so he gives up his soul to be with the mermaid, and then she drags him down into the deep. So without his soul, he's chilling underwater with this mermaid love. I'm very unclear if his legs fused together. I don't know if Oscar was as graphic. I think Oscar was more about making this point. Oscar points out that this immortal soul is not so easily discarded. Actually, the soul is trying to return to the fisherman, but unfortunately, the fisherman is so obsessed and in love with his mermaid that there's no more room in his heart for his immortal soul. So basically, right? Mm-hmm. So only upon both of their deaths can the soul re-enter like the life force of man, of his humanity. That was... Imagine like being such a genius that when you read something, you're like, I have a counter argument, and you just like Hamilton, like you write the other 51. Like,
I wish writing was that easy.
For real.
I don't understand what's up with these 1800s men, where like literally they just ooze, like ooze just the words and letters and just retorts. I don't get it.
We have factories and automated publishing now, right? But in the 1800s, like, Johannes von Printing Press was new. So, like, that book was being released so much more slowly than it does now. So Oscar got a hold of it in his scholarly circle, and then Oscar was like, yo, I got a response for you. Published that, and then that circulated. I just was like, what the?
I know. And, like, okay, hear me out.
Oscar, Hans, and Johannes, man.
I know, they out here. Triple threat. All three of them. But only together. They're only a triple threat together. Apart, they're just threats. It's fine. So, like, when it comes to Oscar and Hans, right? So, with the Hans Christian Andersen one, mermaids as a whole live for like 300 years, not involving themselves with getting immortal souls or anything. So, like, you're like low key immortal. Low key, right? But then, if you fall in love with a human and that human loves you back, then you get a soul, an immortal soul, but you gonna die with him. Personally, I choose 300 years. Respectfully.
I mean, that sounds like a very long decay, but
But like, look at her grandmother. Her grandmother exists in this tale, and she seems like she's thriving.
Grandmother Willow was doing the most.
I think you mean Grandmother Ripple, just saying.
Grandmother Seaweed.
Yes. Apparently, one of the other themes is Christianity, and the only argument that I can make for that is like the mention of souls and the mention of God at the end. Then the Little Mermaid lifted her transparent arms towards God's Son, and for the first time shed tears. Sad girl. And then there was another mention of God here too. God shortens our time of probation, but I don't recall any other God.
When she becomes an airbender.
Yeah.
I saw the Christian theme most clearly with this whole concept of you're not human, so you don't have an immortal soul, and only humans do. And through consummating a marriage, will you be eternal kind of thing.
Oh.
And I guess, this was a religious era. I guess I just was surprised that he was talking about the joining of a male to a female and she wasn't human female, warranting her a human immortal soul. But no, instead she becomes an airbender.
So, I listened to my podcast, right? My paranormal true crime one, and that's why we drink. They don't pay me to advertise. I'm just saying I love them that much. But they talked about the spiritual awakening.
Yes.
And I feel there were two. I think the first one was around this time.
Yeah. The Protestant kind of schisms were... This is where our feature guest speaker over here could definitely contribute. But yeah, it first happened in Europe, but this would have been around the time of Martin Luther. 99 Theses, but a bitch ain't one.
I hate you. So actually, this would be around the Second Great Awakening, or like just right after it.
Right. So all these different sects have these different varied beliefs stemming from the same or a version of the same text.
Yeah. Sorry, it just popped into my head, and I was like, wait.
No, that's a great point.
History.
So it tracks. Like, these were no longer folks in Denmark who were, pagan Vikings. They were now civilized Christians. And, the religion of Denmark is primarily Lutheran, like Germany. So anyone who's affiliated is typically going to be in a Protestant sect, which makes sense. So this whole concept of the immortal soul and, like, that communion with another tracks.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, with social norms, women weren't truly at their full potential until they had kids. Crazy. And first married, though. First married, then with kids, then with child. If we're following the norms of this time. But again, social constructs in the 1800s. We'll spend another episode on that.
There were many things that were different from the Disney version of the story. Primarily, I think the ending is the most different thing because she actually gets the guy. She also has her animal companions who we love, Scuttle and Flounder. Sea Witch gets a name and like a whole theme song, iconic.
Drag Queen.
Inspired by Divine. And King Triton plays a much larger role, whereas in Hans's story, it's the Grandmother Willow figure. I don't know why I keep saying that.
Because it's just the context. Like, she is the Grandmother Willow to the Little Mermaid, but she's actually Grandmother Seaweed.
Grandmother Seaweed was the inspo. Also, in the story, we have a little exposure to her sisters, which we don't really get until Little Mermaid 2. the straight to VHS sequel.
Oh yeah,
We
I
know,
know, but we still. Well, you mean like in terms of like their personalities?
yeah, I
Oh, okay,
thought
okay, okay.
those. Yeah, like we know she has all the sisters in the original, but we don't meet them really. But in the story, they each get a paragraph about their first time going above the ocean, and that gave us a little insight into who they are.
Um, Excuse me. The whole opening number of the first movie of the movie is them introducing themselves. So how dare you how dare you say that I don't know who what was her name? Aquata is. All right.
Aquaria.
You're probably right. That is her name.
That's absolutely a winner of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Just saying. I'm just appalled that you said that I've never met these sisters in my life when I did.
Sorry, I forgot they had a whole Von Trapp number in the beginning.
Dead ass. And then they do like literally all this just to introduce Ariel, who is not even there. Ugh,
Crying.
rude.
Yeah, she's out in her cave. All in all, I mean, I think we can see the link between the two stories. However, I think the end of the story is kind of what throws me when it comes to the name that was chosen for Ariel. Ariel apparently is a gender-neutral baby name of Hebrew origin. In the Bible, it is used to actually like describe the city of Jerusalem, and it means Lion of God, which essentially means Disney thought their portrayal of this girl who was willing to sacrifice her voice and her family and her tail and her oceanic freedom for some boy she saw at a distance makes her a Gryffindor. Lion of God. Like
More
you're
like
brave. I
Snake
don't find
of
her
God.
brave.
No, Snake of God. That's what she is.
She is not.
I would argue, I think, more in favor of a Slytherin because the choices that she's making are self-serving.
No,
No, seriously, you go to a place and try to live without food or the ability to poop.
oh my gosh, she probably did have to take her first dump when she got legs.
Look at this jump. Isn't it neat?
No. Oh my god. I meant that she, like a lion is supposed to be the embodiment of bravery. So Disney was trying to tell us in 1989, they're telling us Ursula is inspired by a drag queen and this girl is brave for her actions.
She's brave because she's a woman who keeps it in.
But then ironically, Ursula's song literally disproves that and calls her out for being
A dumbass.
for lack of a better word,
Listen,
Huh?
I just,
following her ideals in her heart.
no, no, mm-mm,
Isn't
no.
Oh, we're getting there.
By your definition of what you guys just all said, poor unfortunate souls, mermaids don't have souls, right? So she's kind of just like, you guys are poor unfortunate
Wait, we have
souls.
to rewind to that.
You have wants, you have desires, you have all this shit that you don't need, right? Like, she's bragging if you think about it. She'd be shitting on you. She's
Weak.
she's going off.
I didn't even
Makes
think
a
about
valid
Ursula Valid singing about poor unfortunate souls when Hans Christian Andersen literally the whole thing was if this boy marries you then you're entitled to an immortal human soul. In 2 weeks we'll be reading the Ursula origin story, which is canon, and hopefully we can discuss Ursula a little bit more and kind of her shenanigans.
That page on my camera was straight up shenanigans. Speaking of Ursula, I need to point this out. So when she's making the deal, right?
In the book or in the movie?
Blah, blah, la 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 in the short story. I'm gonna talk about both. In the short story, she states, "But you will have to pay me too," said the witch. "And it is no trifle that I demand. You have the most beautiful voice of any at the bottom of the sea. I dare say you think you will fascinate him with it, but you must give me that voice." And so I find it very funny that Sea Witch in the story says it is no trifle, but the lyric, or rather the line is, "It's just a token, merely a trifle." So I like that kind of wink that Disney was just like, so we acknowledge that it's not just a trifle, just like the OG Sea Witch said, but like we're trying to manipulate this dumbass to give me the voice.
Obsessed.
So Just a token, merely a trifle. What I want from you is your voice. And then,
Obsessed.
wait. And then, so then, I'm sorry, I'm very excited about this point. Um, Little Mermaid said, but if you take my voice, what have I left? And then she says, your beautiful form, your gliding gait, and your speaking eyes. With these, you ought surely to be able to bewitch a human heart. So in the song, it's, but without my voice, how will I? And then Ursula goes into, you'll have your looks, your pretty face. And don't underestimate the importance of body language. So the men up there don't like a lot of blab. I'm sorry, copyright. This is the third copyright problem in today's episode.
It's probably gonna happen a lot because it's Disney month, so.
It's just so good. So good. Anyway, literally one of my favorite songs. I literally wrote, LOL, Urs, what was it? Urs says otherwise.
If I could screen share right now, I would show you my annotated section. I highlighted that entire part and I wrote, this is literally poor unfortunate souls.
It is. 100%. And I love it. Another thing that makes me angry about this damn prince, I'm sorry. And I highlighted it here and I wrote LOL, but really what I meant was shaking my damn head and LOL.
She is not.
I would argue, I think, more in favor of a Slytherin because the choices that she's making are self-serving. The prince said, this is after she's found on the beach, he brings her in and like, this is after like they chill and like he sees that she's a beautiful ass dancer and he says, the prince said that she should always be near him and she was allowed to sleep outside his door on a velvet cushion.
What was that? What does that even mean?
Why is she a dog? Why is she a puppy?
Like, because she can't speak?
Why is she a puppy? Copyright 4.
We were the fourth copyright of this episode. Copyright infringement. Okay, Ursula. Okay, Ursula too. Why did you both just do that?
Really?
Yeah.
Because my laugh is an evil villain laugh.
What do they call it when women have a burly laugh?
Not a burly laugh. Fact that he keeps kissing her with no intentions of getting with her.
What honestly was that? Like, so this goes back to that whole like, if you don't have a soul, you're not human. So he was literally just treating her like shit. What else was he doing to her?
Like shit, like garbage. Sleep on this cushion, babe. It's velvet. What?
I'm just gonna kiss your mouth with no tongue in it, like, and just keep kissing you and wishing you were someone else. What the hell was that?
Bro.
I bet it was a wet kiss too, because he's nasty. She should have stabbed him when she had the chance. Dumbass. Dumbass. Dumb. Anyway, okay. Those are my main qualms at this point. I mean, I'm sure I have others, but right now, those are the main qualms. They're out.
It was definitely giving star-crossed, but only one star in the sky.
So, are you really star-crossed?
Star?
Say it one more time, Claudia. Sorry.
I said, so are you really star-crossed if there's only one?
You're a comet on the end of its trajectory. You're gonna crash and burn.
Oh my god, you're a
oh my god! That's how she masters fire!
No. She is not the Avatar. Do not give her that much power.
Oh, I agree. I mean, she's young and angsty and all these things. So, I was thinking, we literally got a birthday, sort of, from the story. Hans Christian Andersen, for some reason, chose to mention that this girl was, her birthday fell in the wintertime. Mm-hmm. So, knowing that Denmark's in the northern hemisphere, that would put her birthday somewhere between, like, December 20th to March 20th-ish, right? Like, the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Okay. So, what signs fall within those, and what do you think? Where do you think her birthday actually fell based on her traits?
Okay. So, we're looking at Capricorn at that point would start, Aquarius, and Pisces. Now.
Oh, yeah. So that totally wipes out Scorpion Sag because they are before December 22nd.
Mm-hmm. So then, we have these three. We are at odds, you and I. The only thing we can agree on is that it's in February. That's all we can agree on.
I'm
But
crying.
my argument is that she is a February Pisces.
And I believe she's a February Aquarius.
Disagree wholeheartedly.
With Claudia being biased as an Aquarius, but I am biased because I'm an Aquarius rising.
But also,
Did I say that right?
you're an Aquarius lover. Like, you have so many.
Right, which is ironic though, because I absolutely don't love her. I love Ariel, who I don't think is a February Aquarius. I think this version is a February Aquarius.
No. Let me tell you why she is a February Pisces, according to my 5 minutes of research. Actually, our unbiased judge, our in-house zodiac expert, needs to listen in.
I'm gonna unplug my microphone, so just tell me if you can hear me.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
What?
I can't hear you. I'm gonna hear you. I think I hear you right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, it fixed itself.
Let me tell you why this dumbass is a February Pisces. Okay. First of all, February Pisces, at least according to 5 minutes of research, February Pisces, don't come at me, please. They cannot establish boundaries very nicely and very well. And what does Ariel not do? Establish a boundary with this prince. That's first and foremost. Granted, yes, social construct, that might be your counter, but yes, I would say she is not being very clear and respecting her own boundaries, hence not setting them. She is a creative little being. February Pisces are also very, very creative. She's a singer. She loves to dance. Probably writing poetry if she knows how to write. Part of me was wondering, like, why didn't she just write things down? But I guess, like, she probably doesn't know how to write things. Anyway, she is very emotional and very empathetic, which is why she is able to communicate with her eyes, because he knew everything that she was saying based off her eyes because of how empathetic and how emotionally driven she is, like a February Pisces. And she's very generous. One would say too generous, also coming back to that lack of boundaries thing, or unable to set boundaries. Always leading with her heart, always. Has not stopped, will not stop leading with her heart. Very forgiving. If somebody treated me the way that this prince treated her, would not be forgiving him, ever. No. She is also very, very kind, and again, 5 minutes of research. When we're talking about air signs and water sign being Pisces, she's overwhelmed by her feelings. Whereas with air signs, they are sharp, they are intellects, and they are communicative, all of which she cannot do or possess.
I actually find a lot of those traits to overlap with an Aquarius.
Yes.
They do,
Plus,
because February.
Aquarius as an air sign, but also water bearer, encompasses her whole destiny as a elemental champion here. Okay, expert.
Sorry, I'm not an expert, but the whole lack of boundaries that Claudia was talking about, I attune to Aquarian's free spirit. They're always going to be liberal, and boundaries aren't, they're not liberating. So, as an Aquarius, you're going to want to have open boundaries or none at all, or be okay to have change. And being a sign that is not necessarily emotive, but ruled by the eyes, I feel that a lot of things can be misconstrued through the gaze of an Aquarius, because it's not really specified upon, because it's not a realm of communication, it's not a realm of emotion, but it's a realm of humanitarianism and
impulse.
I wouldn't say impulsive. I don't think Aquarians are impulsive. I think they're chaotic.
That's a trait, apparently.
Storm bearers, like they harvest the storm. They're a water sign masquerading as an air sign. So like, I don't think that I think that they're steadfast in their ideals, and being steadfast in one's ideals is like, can be a letdown, because if you believe something so strongly, like, sacrificing your tail and your ability to breathe underwater to become, human and feel touch and kiss and all that stuff, and lose your ability to communicate. Also, very Aquarian, because like, no offense to my Aquarians out there, but I feel that y'all are better at communicating through gestures, actions, art, not necessarily your voices, because you're not gonna come up to me and be like da 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 da.
Boundary.
But that's what she wants because she's so committed to her ideal that he's the one, and he's going to grant her this everlasting life. She's also the most unique of her sisters because we got those like quick like storylines about how they interpreted their first excursion into the above the sea. Mm-hmm. And all of them were drawn to something different. They all were like, oh, the stars are so pretty, or oh, there's a ship, I'm gonna hide, or oh, the land is lovely, or look at these animals. She was like, look at this, man, that's it, that's the thing. And she like was so about like, I have to save him, altruistic, like a true humanitarian Aquarian. She saved him, she let someone else take the credit for it, who he then married, and she ultimately sacrificed, or she allowed herself to be sacrificed.
February Aquarians are logical decision makers. This dumbass is not logical in her decision making in the slightest. The only logic that she applies is, this is what I want, this is how I get it. That is the only remotely logical decision making that she makes.
But that's direct logic.
Seems pretty logical.
She's like, well, I'm going to do it. It's hurtful and it's terrible and she loses her family, but it's still like, she's like, oh, I lived this life under the water. The only way to get what I want is to do it this way. I don't have a soul, so I have to take this chance. I'd rather take this chance than stay here for 300 years. Do I agree with her and you? Absolutely not.
The only logical reasoning to deal with it is to take it away. You know, so her like fishmanity, like she sacrificed that for a little bit of like the human stuff.
I now have legs.
I now have legs. It's like reverse.
I have legs. Legs I have.
I have legs.
Yeah, it's direct. It's a bad decision, I think, but it's directly logical. Like, oh, I need to be a human in order to get a soul and get him to love me. I also think like the air in her is what creates like this chaotic endeavor that she goes on until he marries the other bitch. So she's very much giving Storm of, I'm gonna dedicate myself to this.
Dedicate me. So I hear you. I do. I can't get on board.
No, that's so on-brand, though. My favorite thing about Aquarians is they're not like other Aquarians. So you'll constantly talk to an Aquarian. You'll always find that distinct thing that makes them so Aquarian. It's an individual sign. Like, it's a sign about being fixed, being water and wind. It's a lot. You're not going to get the same thing in every bag. So...
And that's exactly who she is compared to her sisters. They're all like, we saw the earth, we're coming back down now. And she's like, no, I'm not like you. I have this mission. And I think that is really what gave me the Aquarian more than anything else. I thought it was interesting, Claudia, that both of us also were thinking about Sag, but then now it looks like that doesn't fit in the winter month period. But there's more winter in Scandinavia than there isn't winter.
Winter!
That's true.
So I Googled it, and there is a debate on the internet about what sign she is. And there are people who think she's a Taurus.
No.
I'm sorry, are we in Australia where May is winter?
Well, the argument for that is comfort and whatever she finds comfortable, right?
In her little...
To the point of detriment.
But she's born in winter, like he says so.
But I'm saying...
So she cannot be a Taurus.
She's of the... Oh.
Like, literally can't be a Taurus.
Who's to say that Ariel is the Little Mermaid? She's Disney's The Little Mermaid.
So, oh, my bad. So Disney's The Little Mermaid was the Taurus that I found on the internet. That's a good point. I still don't believe she's a Taurus.
No.
But
that kills the winter thing.
Yeah. Because I don't think we know her birthday in the film.
Unless explicitly stated.
Maybe we'll get it in our
doll or something?
Maybe we'll get it in the new movie.
So, according to Disney Astrology on Tumblr.
Disney Astrology.
On Tumblr!
You got the experts in here.
Yeah, you know, the Tumblr experts. Libra, October 8th. I don't know who gave them the audacity and the permission.
All right, y'all. So we're going to ask you, comment take our poll. What sign is the Little Mermaid?
February Pisces.
February Aquarius. And I guess we'll list the other ones.
Pisces.
What did I say they were?
Taurus.
Capricorn. Is winter, though.
Just throw them all in there.
So we'll extend them all. Taurus. And you just said Libra?
Unfortunately.
Alright, so I included the winter. We'll include the winter months, Cap, Aquarius, Pisces, and then we'll throw in Taurus, Libra. And then justify your claims. Why do you think that? And if you want to do our whole star chart, please do. Tell us what you think, and maybe that'll help us figure out why we both settled on February, which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah. Within our show notes, we've also included some tales and myths of mermaids. One of them being from a native Ottawa tribe, Manana of the Waterfall. So, have you heard of this bitch?
I have not. But one of our subscribers pitched it to us, so tell me.
Thank you, subscriber. So, she was this beautiful woman, right? And she was found by a warrior of the Ottawa Nation. She stood out because she had 2 fish tails and scales all over her body. All right. But her face and torso were that of a female human, or rather a female presenting human, I should say. When the warrior asked her how she came to be, she explained that she once longed to roam the sky and heavens. So the Great Spirit granted her prayers and permitted her to leave the earth. When she got bored of her celestial wanderings, she was allowed to come back to earth, but now in a form that was neither mortal nor immortal, and neither man nor beast. So she could only be restored if a human loved her. And so the warrior adopted her as his own, and over time, she lost her scales, and her legs were restored. However, to restore her human soul, she required romantic love. And then, here we go. Romeo and Juliet. Ooh. A warring chieftain fell for her, and she for him, and so their union was denied. And so she went to cry by the waterfall, and she ended up drowning herself and her lover. Common theme, at least with the Little Mermaid, acquiring a human soul with love.
That's super interesting, but like nothing else in common with the European kind of version of a mermaid.
Yeah, no, not really.
Oh, I love it.
And that, my friends, is copyright number 5.
Yeah!
So while we're on the topic of half fish-like, half human-like folks or characters in legends and lore, another subscriber suggested this story of Yao Bikuni, which comes from Japan. So I looked into this one. She's not a famous sea creature. She's a nun. But bear with me here. So in Japan,
PTSD. I'm sorry.
I apologize in advance. I won't say that word again. So we're gonna get to Yao in a second. I have to give you the backstory on the half fish, half person first in Japanese folklore.
Go on.
So the word for this creature is ningyo, which means human fish, and apparently there were 2 definitions of this word in history. For originally it was half female human, half fish. Then it just became gender neutral. But today the term ningyo normally would refer to both a mermaid and a merman. So there we go. Someone's acknowledging the merman. I loved that idea that it's just a kind of a non-binary water spirit, really, who's half human-like, half fish-like, because now there's nobody causing chaos and luring sailors. Now it's just, as you're going to see, a source of power or magic. So, they had nothing to do with, sirens of Greek mythos, right? So in feudal era Japan, we first started seeing, so it's medieval Japan, we first started seeing images of these creatures in some artwork, and some people started talking about them, and some historians think that they arose because folks were misidentifying giant salamanders. So also similar to, European explorers misidentifying dolphins and manatees.
How big can salamanders get, though? God damn.
They became this fictitious water spirit who was believed to grant eternal life and youth to those who eat it. So this became the subject of many tales. So if you a pescatarian and you consume a niño, you're young for years. Oh my god, giant salamanders are actually giant.
I want to hug one. They're
I
cute.
do.
I would love to hug one.
They're probably stinky.
But if you eat it, it's going to imbue youth into you. Anyway.
Don't eat the baby.
So, in good old legend fashion, it was discouraged to consume the meat of a niño because it was really hard to get and it could place a curse on you if you wound or capture them.
Oh.
Some legends in Japan say that like folks who slaughtered niño, like their towns then were, they crumbled into the ocean. But, going back to Yao Bikuni, so she's a legendary religious lady, I won't say the word again, who allegedly lived for 800 years. You heard that, Hans Christian Andersen? Mermaids living for 300? No. Niño gave this lady 800 years of youth and beauty because she consumed the meat accidentally of a niño. It wasn't on purpose. It wasn't vicious. She was kind of like fooled into it at a dinner thing. We have links to these original stories in our show notes. If you're interested, you can check them out. She lived 800 years as a hot nun.
No.
Why? Like, what's the purpose of that? You're not getting tail.
Fishtail she did get.
Hey!
By accident. So you can look up these characters and you can see kind of the old artwork surrounding them. You can read the original myth or reinterpretations of the myth. We compiled them for you because we wanted you to know that mermaids, as we understand them from Disney, exist in European ethnocentric like kind of story and fairy tales. But there's plenty of other half fish, half person creatures in other stories or beings, in other cultural legends and folklore that are absolutely different from what we know about Ariel.
Honestly, I learned so much about about these multicultural mer people, mer creatures.
Aquatic beings?
We'll go with that. Aquatic beings. I love that.
Our expert was calling them humanoids. Aquatic humanoid beings. Sure.
Okay, I love that. I love that for us. So, thanks for being with us tonight.
That was fun.
It was. Maybe you should make a vocal guest appearance more often.
Yeah, I'll be Shy Guy. Shy Guy is what he says a lie guy.
Anyway, thanks to our guest, to our guest host towards the end. We'll call him Shy Guy since that's what he wants right now. But that was husband spouse. And we're doing the sign off. Shush.
You said husband spouse.
That's what you are.
That's me to say house.
That's what you are. So, thanks for joining us. You want to tell them what we're doing next week?
Yeah, we are so excited for next week because today we talked about the protagonist. We talked about kind of where this world of undersea heroines, so to speak, came from. But who's the villain in The Little Mermaid? Ursula. Where does she come from? So we want to tap more into the history, the lore, the legends surrounding the Temptress, the Sea Witch. And I'm really excited, and Claudia's really excited. We're really ready to welcome our first special guest speaker, our sister, Ariana Jobert of Skin by Ari. She is a trained classicist and ritual culture specialist by night, and an esthetician and skin wizard by day. Ariana's going to take us on a journey next week, exploring both the female as an object and like what witches mean through the lens of men. So kind of tapping into what we talked about today. So how do men see women, and how does that turn a woman into a witch?
I love it.
So excited for this. Yeah, so if you check out our resources and our calendar, you'll see we have some suggested readings from the Odyssey, Circe excerpt, as well as maybe something about Calypso as well. If you are looking for those resources, DM us and we'll help you find them.
DM us with your email, specifically.
Yeah. Just let us know how to access you.
And while you're at it, let us know which zodiac sign you think this dumbass Little Mermaid is.
So comment below, please, wherever you're listening to this or watching this, comment below. You know what we didn't think to look up? What was Hans's sign?
Ooh.
All I hear is all of us typing.
April 2nd.
Oh, Aries.
Uh-huh. He was just thinking with his dick.
Let's do his full birth chart.
They probably have
We
it
can.
up already.
Oh,
Just
you're
look for-
right. Okay, so his moon is... It's
Taurus.
It's Taurus.
He's ascending Sag. Sun is Aries. Moon is Taurus.
Sad girl, why me type shit. Moon.
Checks out.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Thank you for joining us as we talked about mermaids as we know them and half human, half fish from abroad as well. We are super excited to talk about our sea witchery with you next week. And please feel free to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Amazon Music, Pods, TikTok.
Insta.
We're everywhere you are and probably everywhere you're not. So find us somewhere, be our friends. We want to be family members with you. We want to be those mermaid sisters under the sea in that bioluminescent world.
Be part of our world.
Be part of our world.
Make a splash with us.
See you next week.
Can't wait. Bye.
Edit me out.